Here's another aspect of why God created, well, why God allows evil. He did say that he did create it. That's where the Calvinists say God's responsible for everything. But here's a good one: touch not God's anointed. So if you take it over into the spiritual realm, why God allows evil, this has a lot to do with it. And what caused me to start talking today is this guy has discovered the cycle of human leaders coming and going, good leader, bad leader, good leader, bad leader. Even Solomon and David both were good and bad both at the same time. Seemed to have a cycle of repeating patterns. So that's what I find throughout the whole Bible is repeating patterns, different things that come up. There's probably about half a dozen to half a dozen different ideas that relate to each other that apply to us today. And, it's not really all about us. It's so funny. Rick Warren made a book, it's not all about us. Then he goes ahead and just starts talking all about you. So in the book, some kind of purpose-filled life, purpose-driven life. So that's the big philosophical question is, why does God allow evil? Why does he allow suffering? Well, was evil here before Adam and Eve was here? Was there possibly a problem that was announced and some entity needs to die? And somehow he invented matter to show and to exhibit destruction? Because it would seem a lot of well-meaning ministers would say, oh, well, there was never any previous precedent of iniquity. Well, I believe that there was, and that there was a takeover plot in heaven. And how would you go about, here's a question for anybody listening, how would you go about firing someone without looking bad for judging them? And real popular now is that word. So if you had to fire somebody, how would you go about doing it? And what if this entity was a mole and he's hiding his iniquities inside his heart? Because we all have an inner self and an outer self. And it's talked about by stating, it's a matter of heart, your heart or intention, and it can be hidden. And what if this person that you had to fire did something so bad that eventually it would destroy everything, just like the saying, a little leaven leaveneth the whole lump. So this pride that permeates through all of creation would eventually ruin it all. So God, actually knowing everything, knows what would happen. This other entity is trying to hide it. And this entity is so incorrigible that they've possibly been given dozens of times to admit their guilt, but they're just hiding and obfuscating and trying to outwit God by minimizing the problem. So we've got this pure white vanilla heavenly realm that's all under one will. Everything is unified, pure vanilla, and somebody decides, they think, hey, I believe I can run this place better than God can. And isn't that what a lot of people say is, well, if I was God, my God of love wouldn't, destroy somebody. So this entity did something that it needs to just, the problem is announced. Hey, someone needs to die. And it would seem that God did invent a lot of matter in this whole universe to exhibit the destruction that this entity is capable of. So I will destroy the responsible party, but restoring it to a better being. So that's why we're in such a quandary here on earth, is that, we realize, God lets us do whatever we want to do. Really, I can do whatever I want to do right now. But that's not the wise thing. So, here's another question. If you were God, how would you create a video game? Let's say that what we're living in, it would seem that God has created the most elaborate board game, 3D board game, where all of us are key players determining, our own outcome. It seems maybe that the first games were like tic-tac-toe. It's kind of simple. You try to outwit somebody else. You try to win somehow. And then they make checkers and then chess. And here's a 4-dimensional tic-tac-toe. Try to line up 4 of these things in one direction. So is that as complicated as man can get? Or have we plateaued with these electronic digital games that are, fueled with all sorts of concepts of first-person shooter, and then competition, racing games, trying to get ahead of, other, trying to dominate, all sorts of concepts that are just duplicating what God has done here on the earth. If you look at history and you look toward the future. So it's pretty amazing that you've watched 7.5 minutes of my video already, but there is 2% of the population who are interested in these kind of things, and trying to figure it out accurately is quite the puzzle. So if you have been looking around for answers and haven't been able to find them, maybe I'll click on a few of them. I could do videos on all these things, all these topics, but let me finish with why God created mankind. Why does he allow evil? But mainly, why did he create mankind? So in my opinion, I think one of the reasons was that he created it for variety. Just look around, look up, look at the variety in the heavens, look straight out, look around us, look at the variety. There's over 2 million known to 10 million estimated life forms or species on planet Earth. Look at the variety, and then look at the variety under the earth too, and all the fish, and look at the variety of topics. I'm interested in physics, architecture. I mean, there is a lot of architecture in the Bible. There's going to be a new city. There's Solomon's temples. There's all sorts of rules that have meanings and analogies. And it would seem that he is 2 reasons why he created mankind was to save mankind. So why would you want to save mankind? Is there a bigger picture? Is this an education for all who are part of this? So that's the second one I can write down here. So going along with the content creator theme, Could it be, a combination of educating and giving info and entertaining? As if you were charged with making, heavens and the earth, how would you do it? God does allow people to have their own children. That's kind of a interesting example of what God's got to deal with. And it's estimated that there's been 100 billion people on planet Earth. And he did kind of give up on 8 billion of them during Noah's time. Worldwide flood, started over, the Great Reset. And it seems, if you read the Bible, it looks like there is a great reset between Genesis verse 1 and verse 2. Because why would you create something void? And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. So in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. So he spoke that all into existence. Spoke it. It's all spoken, created from nothing. And then it became without form and void. He didn't create it that way. And darkness was upon the face of the deep. So some catastrophe happened. And then the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. So maybe he had to quench it with water for some reason. Could be like baptism. Could be, water is, look at that cat. She's just so inquisitive. Look at her. She's going to knock that off. She's going to knock it off. She's quite the entertainment. She is, and does God find us entertaining? And God is such a he's a multitasker. He's taking care of all sorts of things, creating everything, maintaining everything, herding all of us cats, but he's not a micromanager. And, we don't have to understand all this stuff. I've heard that, the Bible is not a scientific book, but here's a concept. God starts recreating it. And then look at this. It repeats several times. And God saw that the light was good. I mean, there was light. God is light. This is reformed. If you look at the idea that God created everything from nothing, spoke it into existence, and then, he didn't speak Adam into existence from nothing. So God saw the light and it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness. So there's your first instance of 2 Timothy 2:15, that we're supposed to rightly divide and know what applies to us and what doesn't, where we want to dwell. Do we want to dwell in the light, or do we want to monkey around in the darkness? So it does talk about some of this stuff, very puzzling, very intriguing. But I think he says 7 or 8 times, and God said, let there be light, and there was light. Where does it say, and let there... Here's another part where you did the herb yielding seed after its kind. So everything repeats after its kind. You can't made a tiger and a lion, and you do get a liger, but it does not propagate itself. It dies out. That's how the Bengal cat was formed. They were mated within their kinds, and they can keep propagating. So we met a lady who invented the Bengal cat, and she took an Asian leopard cat and a domestic tabby, kept monkeying around with getting them to mate. And she came up with, not that good of a looking Bengal cat, but today they are so beautiful. It's just jaw-dropping. And it didn't evolve. There were no Bengal cats 50 years ago, 80 years ago. But God created in their genes, in their DNA, the ability to have beautiful spots, have beautiful fur, have beautiful personalities. So here it says, and God saw that it was good. Let me change over to what mankind does. And, you don't invent a Lamborghini, all void, formless and void. If I was to smash this up with a hammer, this is just a small representation of something that's ruined. But say this got in an accident and was totaled. An insurance company says, hey, it costs too much money to fix it. Just take it to the junkyard. Well, it seems that one of the reasons why God has created us is to reform us into something new as a education to the angels that were here before us, that someone needs to die. And what happened then was this problem kept going on and on and on. It says someone needs to die, someone needs to die. So he gets like a political thing going where he rounds up a bunch of the angels to be on his side. And, could Earth be the last battlefield? Could, the solar system does look like it's ruined. Just look at the face of the moon. And it looks like the Earth was in the path of the projectiles that hit the moon, because the moon's face is always, one side is toward us and it's all messed up. So anyone who's honest know that there are two realms that we're living in, some kind of supernatural spiritual world, and it's all been talked about. Look, this Bible is more than 1,000 pages long. You could read it to no end and never get bored. But let's say that God did create the world for variety, because one of the things I've heard people say was, I don't want, you see this, well, I don't want to go to a heaven where you're up on a cloud playing a harp. That's like that's like a plain vanilla, one will going on, plain vanilla. But now living in this realm, with God multitasking between the two realms, he decided to let, 31 varieties of ice cream. What's that? Got all sorts of choices. And God is secretly multitasking without micromanaging. He probably said, hey, well, let's make a new race of creatures that know nothing about me, never seen me, and they'll have to operate by faith. And they're eventually going to be the jurors, and God is going to let mankind judge the angels who are incorrigible. And what if God did tell the angels that fell, hey, listen, I'm going to have to destroy you, but I'll make you better? And they just had nothing to do with it. Their pride kept them from. So God said, okay, I'll make some lemonade out of this lemon of a creature. Because really, would you want to destroy a Lamborghini Aventador, or what are the new ones that they've just come out with? Because they can be turned into something great again, like the resto mods of the car culture. At car clubs, the car culture respects the guy that can make an old classic into something better than new. A lot of guys will try to make it exactly like a new car, but if you can take some old decrepit beat up thing and build it better than the original, it would seem that God could get just as much glory, if not more so, in recreating something with a plot and a story behind it that helps us to understand why there is evil on the earth, and he's letting it all play out. He's hoping this CFO, Chief Financial Officer, who took advantage of the situation, tried to get away with as much as he could, and God is letting us see the plot and helping us be part of it. Look at that thing. So God created mankind to be jurors, to understand what is good, what is evil, because that was his original intent, and that you don't have any 2-year-olds or 3-year-olds who just learned how to speak show up on the witness stand, and God can use good people and bad people to be his witnesses. I'm pretty sure we're going to be up there and understand exactly what the sentence should be for, these CFO that was here before us and is still fighting for his life. And God is letting this dude, this creature, squirm around and lie and cheat and steal, do his dirty deeds. And this leads to the thought of, well, why is God letting all these ministers, if God allows evil, why is he letting, well, let's make that a different video. This one's getting to be too long. Why it keeps repeating with ministers nowadays and all these NAR, New Apostle Reformations, and Benny Hinn's and all that as something that can be explained as part of God's plan to show what's going on here on planet Earth. So I hope this has helped. Thanks for watching all the way to the end.